I'm going to quickly introduce both Denise Caslino and Frank Lewis, who've joined us. And speaking of transit, Denise, who's now the Executive Vice President and Chief Growth Officer at AECOM, has served in the public sector at CDOT and also as the Commissioner of the Department of Planning. And now, Denise, if I read correctly, you've been at AECOM for over 16 years, starting in the transportation business line area and Chicago metro area executive roles. Bachelor's Science in Civil Engineering from Valparaiso University. Denise, since we don't know each other, it's a real pleasure to impose on you to take time, and you're joined by Frank Lewis, who's Associate VP and Principal at AECOM, and has also been there for quite a while, 13 years, if I'm not mistaken, as a Senior Project Manager and an Operations Manager, a Master of Architecture from University of Kansas, and if I read correctly, early work with Tigerman McCurry. I knew Stanley a little bit, and maybe over a beer someday we'll reminisce.
Yeah, there could be some good stories there.
Yeah. I won't take a lot of time on introductions, except to say how pleased we are that you both could join us. Our field study I've been calling a contradiction in terms when we do it by Zoom. We would much rather be with you in person or at some of the AECOM sites in Chicago or nearby. We've done that before the pandemic with the AECOM offices in both London and Paris, and of course in Los Angeles. And we're very, very engaged with the AECOM office in New York City through a practicum that meets every week and brings our students who are all in the civil engineering program with a concentration in construction engineering and management. The practicum really brings it home to the real world and expectations for future careers in the industry. I won't go into a greater introduction. Hopefully we'll have time at the end for a Q&A and interactive discussion. But again, I think the security enables screen sharing. If there's any problem with that, let me know. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Working, Frank? You're on mute.
Well, while we're waiting for the images to come up, I'm hoping that's a virtual background.
Oh yeah.
It's
actually kind of hard to see, but that's Morgan Shoals, which is at about 4300 South on Lake Michigan, along our lakefront path. So that was for a project interview. So I need to change my Zoom background.
That looks great.
Some clients use Zoom, some use Teams, you know, and we're slowly getting back to live interviews, but we still have a lot of these. Frank, can you get it shared, or do you want me to try?
Yeah, are you seeing it at the moment?
No. Is anybody else seeing it? I'm not seeing it.
No.
No, you're not?
You should be allowed to share the screen.
It's showing me as sharing at the moment. Let me try one more time.
Okay.
I'll say as a fallback, you could send, if you want to send me the presentation, Frank, I could try to load it here.
Okay, let me just try one more time because I was sharing the screen, and so I'll just try sharing the application.
Okay.
All right.
Here we go.
There.
Is it coming through now?
Something's coming.
All right. Is it still coming through?
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's there. It's there.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Okay,
And,
so I apologize, everybody.
And make it full screen. We don't need the notes page.
Sorry, I don't know how to do that with.
Maybe the thing at the bottom.
One of those does it.
Maybe the screen one. I don't know.
Or just go to the top right, maybe.
Did
And
that
now just
not
go to
work?
slideshow.
Okay, sorry, let me try one more time.
Can you just go to, or now you could go to the bottom, right? And hit that one.
That's what I've done, and it's apparently not taking me to.
Oh, well then try slideshow up on top, maybe.
All right, let me try one more time. I'm sorry, everybody.
No worries.
If we have the
Were you
thumbnails,
thinking?
it's not the end of the world. It'll give us a sense of what's coming next.
Yeah.
All right, let me try one more time.
Lost
Just
it.
leave it with the thumbnails and we'll get started since we don't want to impose on your time more.
Is
Oh,
that
you did it.
Oh,
You did
coming
it.
excellent.
through?
Okay.
Okay,
Whatever you
sorry.
did. Okay.
Oh, by the way, if it's okay with you both recording this so that we can share it
Sure.
with people who couldn't attend.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay. So Frank and I'll tag team this. So we're going to talk about actually two projects, two separate contracts that we did for the city of Chicago. And it was really their first foray into design build. It was at first originally thought it might be design build finance, but it was just design build. So this first project is for the agency called 2FM. And they had an existing facility, which was on this area called Goose Island, which was an old industrial area near the river that the city decided with the development pressures that it was more beneficial to flip that land, which will now be commercial, residential, parkland, completely redeveloped. So the city needed a new facility. And what they decided to do was to do some planning and say, okay, we're going to do a new facility on the south side, which you can see there is called the main shop. They were going to do a fueling station centrally located so that city, so this is fire engines, this is streets and sand vehicles, this is garbage trucks, this is every vehicle that the city uses, that the city owns, gets fixed at the main shop. It can go to the fueling station to go anywhere in the city to do work. And then there's also a satellite shop on the north side, which is a smaller area to fix different vehicles for the city. And so another colleague and I had gone into the city and we pitched the idea, your time is of the essence because the land that the original building was on, which was near the fueling station, was very valuable. The developer, the buyer wanted to close. We said, you really should do design build and get out of there. So we convinced them to do the contract like that. And then subsequently won it. So I'm going to let Frank now dive into the details of our execution. Frank.
Thanks, Denise. Okay, so we started with the planning and design process. These are a couple of the highlights from the process. We took a very collaborative approach with the client. The benefits of that was that oftentimes you have clients whose expectations or budget don't really align with what their program needs are. So we worked with them to prioritize the program requirements and to identify what was truly needed based on actual user data as opposed to end user assumptions, which allows us to right size the program elements with the budget. We engaged the AHUs early. This benefited us because it allowed us to confirm all the steps and processes. Like any big city, New York, Chicago has a very intricate permitting process that has a lot of loopholes in it. It allowed us to understand the process. It kept the AHJs informed and advised as to how we were proceeding through the process, which ultimately allowed for quicker permits, as well as it allowed us to get some exceptions as and when we needed them because they were informed of what we were doing. There's an iterative cost estimation process. This was important because, as Denise said, we had a really limited time frame to try to get the budget right. This was a GMP with our construction partners, Hunt. And so we had to be agile in the way that we were tracking costs and aligning with the budget. So every other week, we would have a review of the budget that would right size things based on what we're doing with design, and we can inform the client. There's constant communication at all levels with the client, going all the way up to the mayor's office and the commissioner. And that was important because when people are informed, they know what's going on the project. It also allows them to make quick decisions. So there were some times when we had to quickly adjust a program item to align with the budget and or address an unforeseen issue. They're informed, so like that, we were able to move on and address the issue. And then lastly, we engage a lot of the local officials and residents to understand what their needs and goals were for the project. And so as we were developing each one of the 3 sites, we're able to try to incorporate or address some of the concerns for the development as we're proceeding through. Now, as I touched on earlier, this was a hyper accelerated design process. We had 2 months to go from concept to bid documents, and then we had 1 month to get bids and to essentially secure the GMP. So as I talked about earlier, that constant engagement with all the city officials, we did that with the client also. There's almost daily communication going on with the client. And that was important because it allowed the client to understand and to align expectations. The last thing that you want to do is get to the end of a project and what you delivered doesn't meet the client expectations or the budget goes awry. We're able to manage that because of the continuous touch points. There's clear delineation of scope, and that's really twofold. One, because of the accelerated design process, there were risks associated with how quickly we were able to get through design elements. There are just certain things that we couldn't accomplish in the 2-month time frame. So what we did was we developed a risk matrix, we developed narratives, and we allowed the contractor to improve both their buyout, which reduced their risk, as well as help them address and align the scope to cover any potential gaps that we may have had in reducing our time. Now, in addition, you had the developer-owner relationship, and that was important because the city was trying to stretch every dollar that they had, and to do so, they were reusing existing equipment from the old shop where they were getting new equipment, and we were having to come up with ways of coordinating that between the groups. So we ended up developing a responsibility matrix, which defined what the design build team was doing and what the city was doing with clear lines of distinction, which allowed us to ultimately deliver fairly seamlessly at the end of the day. We did combined page turns. I touched on that before. The intent was that as we were going through the design, the client could understand what we were doing. They could see the design maturing, and then we were also reviewing the budget. So if something was changing or the budget needed to be corrected, or we had a little bit additional budget to play with, we're able to modify the design in those discussions. We had those at regular intervals. A lot of the design was really focused on bid packaging. You know, we had the target of trying to get through design in 3 months and then essentially get construction built in anywhere from 12 to 18 months, depending on the project. So to accomplish that, we really had to look at the way that the contractor was going to go about building the project. So what we did was we focused our design efforts in a manner that aligned with a fast tracking of bid documents. So we tackled site civil works first, then we went into construction works, such as substructure and structural elements. Then we released the rest of the building packages, architecture, MEP, interior finishes, and the like. That really allowed us to maintain the schedule. And then concise permitting due to early engagement. Like I said, there's a ton of pitfalls with the city process, but because we engage the Department of Buildings earlier on, we're able to understand what some of these pitfalls could be and mitigate some of them through our design process. So we knew that if we went any deeper than 16 feet, that we were going to trigger a whole bunch of underground reviews. So we're able to manage that into the design of the buildings to adjust and amend soil conditions so that we could avoid having what is typically a 4 to 6 month long process and just go through the normal permitting process. So all these things allowed us to accelerate design through the GMP and ultimately the final buyout. I'm going to hand things back to Denise to kind of run through some of the project numbers.
Okay, thanks, Frank. This is something that these stats are something we are really proud of. Frank touched a lot about the schedule, which was insane that we got it done. And it was just done because it was a collaborative process with the city. Why did my Zoom go off? Sorry, I was trying to get my camera back in. Sorry, there. We had 0 change orders. I mean, we really hit that GMP because we hit it because of all that coordination that Frank talked about with the client. It was a safe project. We had all these labor hours. There was no recordables, which is huge. The other thing we're really proud of is the work that we did within the community. So the city had given us really, really big goals for outreach to make sure that the community, they receive the jobs and the benefit of the construction work. And so you can see minority business enterprises, the goal was 28%. We used 39%. Women-owned businesses, we more than doubled that at 19%. And then when you look at the actual people who are out there constructing the work, we really did well. The minority journey workers, apprentices, female apprentices goal, which can be really difficult in heavy construction because of the type of work, more than doubled that, and more than doubled minority labor. So we really gave back to the community with this project. And we're really proud of how we did that, how we were able to execute that.
Thanks, Denise. Like with any project, you're going to have lessons learned. If you don't take lessons learned away from a project, then you're probably not being honest with yourself and looking for ways to improve. So a couple of the takeaways from the 2FM project was improved BIM coordination. I know that kind of seems like a standard in this day and age, but what we found was that with some of the smaller businesses, they weren't quite up to speed with the use of Revit, BIM, or Navisworks. And so there were some hurdles earlier on in getting people engaged and getting everything into the model for coordination. And we probably could have gotten a little bit earlier engagement from everybody once the construction phase started. We implemented it throughout design, but then once the subs came on, there's a little lag in getting things up to speed, which resulted in a couple of coordination issues on site that we probably could have mitigated had we been a little bit more straightforward in tackling that. Reduce site risks. This one's on here, and it's a frustrating one for, I think, anybody that works in Chicago or a big city like New York. You're never going to know what is going on in the project site. We engaged all the local utilities. Everybody swore up and down, no, the site's clean, the site's clean, the site's clean. We go to excavate one of the first foundations, boom, we hit a fiber line, which cuts out communication to the neighborhood because AT&T swore they had nothing there. So one of the lessons learned that we've implemented on our future projects is we've implemented things like ground penetrating radar, magnetometer testing, revalidating utilities within the public right-of-way, doing additional environmental testing in boreholes. These are all things that when I touch on the next project, things that we've incorporated, which completely mitigated all the site risks for what was potentially a pretty risk-heavy project site. We generated, or coming out of this, we have generated rapid response plans for unforeseen conditions. You're gonna find stuff in places where things have been previously developed. And if you can't find a way to move through the project quickly, you're gonna start to burn time and money. And so we've generated additional response plans into kind of our standard project management plan that allows for improved communications, decision-making, et cetera, that as a result, we're now more agile at handling situations that do pop up. A clear definition of deliverables. As Denise touched on, this was the first time the city's ever done a design build contract. They thought that they were clear in what they were trying to define in the contract, but to be completely honest, their expectations didn't really come through. So we had some slight differences in what the expectations were. So one of the things that we have done and worked with the city on future projects is really trying to define what the expectations are going to be for each phase, whether it's budget, whether it's design deliverable, whether it's community outreach. The goals are clear. So it minimizes some of the confusion and some of the stress that occurs. And then lastly is collaborative contingency usage. I hate to say it, but every client, when they see contingency, they think, hey, that's my piggy bank that I'm going to use at the end of the day to buy more stuff for the project. they don't ever expect that it's going to be used for unforeseen conditions or things that are going to pop up during construction. So one of the things that we have implemented on other projects is a more robust communication process for the use of contingency. We have weekly contingency review meetings. We have reduced the draw limits for contingency, whereas typically it could be up to $50,000. We've reduced it. And even though we have reduced it, and we don't technically have to tell the client, we still do because we think that it's the right way of managing a project with the client so that at the end of the day, they know exactly where they can use their dollars most effectively, especially when it comes to, cities, major metropolitan cities where they have to find a way of, stretching every dollar they can to the maximum level. We're going to take you through another design build project with the City of Chicago, which is our Joint Public Safety Training Center. And I'm going to let Denise kind of spearhead the inception of this, as she was instrumental in this one too.
So when we were talking to the city, pitching them to do design build for the maintenance facilities, we also knew that this was on the horizon. And so they had thrown this into the bucket to be the project after the 2FM facility. So why is the city doing this? So I don't know if you read stuff in the news, but the City of Chicago Police Department has been under consent decree for the last few years to improve their training so that they engage better in the community. And at the same time, the city's training facilities are very archaic and just so out of date. And for the second largest city in the United States after New York with the second largest police force, it's really it's really embarrassing, the fact that they are able to do what they are able to do with the facilities that they have. You have police and firemen who every day give it their best shot to train the new recruits as well as they can. So they really do deserve this facility. So part of what the city was looking at is where they sited the facility. And they purposely did not put it downtown. Right now, the existing facilities are in the West Loop, the police and the firemen are essentially in the South Loop, which are really nice developed neighborhoods. But instead, they've decided to put it out in the neighborhoods, and they've put it on the west side of the city in a pretty challenged area. It does have some adjacent things. It has the city's old waste transfer station, which you see there in the lower right corner. There is a high school up to the top left, or high school, which also brings in potentially some partnering opportunities going forward. And then over to the right is the Cta Bus Barn, which is where the CTA not only maintains buses, but also does bus training, driving. And so this one also had a tight budget, $85 million. It's a 30-acre site. It used to be full of railroad tracks. And some of the other things. It's also a site challenged in, if you look at the lower left corner of it, that's actually raised grade. So while a lot of the site is pedestrian friendly, there's a whole slew of it that isn't, because there's a railroad viaduct there. So that posed other challenges, because our goal was to bring it back in the grid, to bring this land back on the grid. The city of Chicago has a wonderful grid of north, south, east, west, and to make it more, pedestrian street accessible. So with that, I'll give it to Frank.
Thanks, Denise. So here's a quick overview of the project site. You've got Chicago Avenue, which is that main east-west thoroughfare. The rendered area is the 30 acres. And this is ultimately the final phased approach we had for the project site. So phase one, which is what we're currently delivering, is the main training building. Phase 1A, adjacent to it, are developer outlots, where there's going to be a girls club, which continues on with the drive for a development catalyst in the neighborhood. A Peaches restaurant, which will have restaurant management training in the evenings. And then the first ever urban Culvers. I am super excited to see what that's going to look like at the end of the day. And then there's going to be outdoor training as well as additional land acquisition that the city is going to be pursuing as they go forward. Now, as Denise touched on, the time that this project came up, policing and police policies obviously were very contentious. So as you can imagine, engagement with the community and the neighborhood was at the utmost of importance. So here's a couple of images from some of our engagement sessions. But what we tried to do was find ways to engage the local community at the very onset of the project, and to establish both a goal and a vision for the project. What would make it successful in the eyes of the community? How best can we engage the community and the neighborhood, and what are good ways of communicating with you and the neighborhood? These were just some of the initial questions that we're asking as we were trying to figure out the best way of integrating this project into the community in a beneficial manner. Some of the things that we found were that the alderman wanted to be kept informed on a biweekly basis. She established an executive committee that we routinely engage with. We presented at board meetings, which were the third Thursday every month within the community, where we presented design updates, job fairs and career fairs when opportunities were coming up. And it also gave us a really great opportunity to survey the residents, both formally and informally. And in engaging with the community, we figured out local groups that could help us with workforce development and engaging people that may have been forgotten in terms of union workforce and the like. So again, as I said, here's some of the design workshops that we had with them, where we established the goal and the vision. We had these over multiple weeks and months, where we established, like, what does this building mean to you from a design standpoint? How do you want it to reflect your neighborhood? What does it mean at the end of the day for it to be a successful project? So as we surveyed the residents, these were some of the boards that we presented. And the sticky notes were different words or statements that really reached out to them. What this did was this informed our design process. We could understand what was going to resonate with the community. There are a couple of things where, as we talked about, some keywords like transparency. We said, what does transparency mean to you? Is that literal or subjective? Like, they said both. We want to be able to see what's happening in the building, to understand and see people training, but we also want to have a dialogue with the people that are training to understand what the latest policies are for police training. So through this process, we were able to come up with a rendering that had the full support, or a concept design that had the full support of the community, which, given everything that was going on, we were really proud of the fact that we were able to get the community's buy-in for the design of the building. In turn, we're also engaging the building end users, as well as city agencies like Department of Planning and Development. And we're able to, through the engagement process of all the different groups, receive a unified buy-in for the design of the project, which we were super proud of at the end of the day, because it was not an easy task. One of the other things that the neighborhood brought up as we were engaging them was they also believe that this should be an economic catalyst for the neighborhood. As you can see here with this map, this is kind of the Chicago corridor that we were focusing on. They wanted to find a way to take some of the resiliency that we had actually done on earlier parts of Chicago Avenue and continue to extend it, and to continue to have development all along the Chicago Avenue corridor. But they didn't know how to do it. And so they wanted some ideas and some concepts that we could work through, that they could then pitch back to the city. So we looked at some items like existing public amenities, stormwater capacity and flow, traffic incidents, accessibility to transit, funding, et cetera, as ways that we started to look at ways of improving the community and the corridor for the neighborhood. That really kind of took us to a three-phased approach. One that was street enhancements, which included some items such as vehicular and bike safety, flooding reduction, enhanced public space, improved health, etc. Looking into the relocation of industrial. Over on the right here, there was industrial interspersed into other parts of the neighborhood. We looked at ways of consolidating that, increasing opportunity zones within the community. Ways that redevelopment of maybe underutilized or ill-placed sites could be redeveloped so that it improved the benefit for the community. And then we talked them through financing. There's a lot of misconceptions with the way that TIF funds can be used, as well as opportunity zones. And so we spent several sessions just kind of working through different ways that the neighborhood could reach out or lobby some of these funds or opportunities, or get in place with other funding streams to capitalize on opportunity zones or TIF funding. Denise touched on this earlier when we were looking at by the numbers. One of the other things that the neighborhood greatly cared about when we're engaging them was job creation and workforce development. That was one of the repeated things that as we were sitting there, in the meetings, the ward meetings at night, people would put up their hands and say, like, look, when are jobs going to start happening? When can I apply for something? When can I start working? I'm having trouble getting into the union because I've got back dues. What can be done to help me with that? All of the goals that we've established for the project exceed everything that is a minimum within the city of Chicago. Denise touched on it earlier. We don't want to just hit the minimums. We want to find a way to exceed so that we actually are having a positive impact on the neighborhood and the community. So some of our goals for this one were 28% minority business enterprise, 8% women business enterprise, 50% of the workforce from Chicago residents, 7.5% from local residents, which means certain neighborhoods directly surrounding the project, minority journeymen, 35%, minority apprentices, 25%, female journeymen and apprentices, 7% each. So that's kind of how it all started. So how it's going right now, we are probably 60% of the way through construction right now. And we are exceeding all the numbers except for 2, and those should be coming up. So these represent things as they currently stand. So the contractor has bought out about 95% of the contract so far to date, but the numbers don't start taking effect until we actually have work going on the project site. So as we get more people on the project site, the numbers will keep increasing. So right now, 37% versus 28%. So we're already exceeding that by 10 points. WBE, we're up a couple of points. Chicago, we're at 39. We will easily exceed the 50%. Local, we're already 2.5 points ahead of local engagement. Minority journeymen, 56%. Minority apprentices, 57. Denise touched on this earlier. Probably the one that's the biggest challenge right now are female journeymen. There just aren't a whole lot of people in the workforce right now, and the female journeymen that are out there already have jobs. So we are working with the community as well as the unions to try to find ways that we can increase the number of female journeymen that are coming out to site. But then if you look at female apprentices, we're tripling the number right now, and we're not even done with construction. So we're blowing some of the numbers out of the water. And these are some of the things that the neighborhood really cares about, because it's helping to put money back in the pockets of the residents. So how are we doing on the project right now? So as I said, we're about 60% complete. Not to toot our own horn, but we are ahead of schedule by about 2 months right now. When it comes to the budget, that 85 million that Denise mentioned earlier on, we're under budget right now. We have not drawn against the contingency. So all those lessons learned that we implemented or we took from the 2FM project that we put into this one are paying off. We've been able to safeguard the client's piggy bank. So now they can actually reallocate things to items that weren't originally in the budget. So we're helping them buy furniture. We're helping them buy more training equipment. We're helping them, we're now actually expanding the building to the south side of the project site. The project goal for the city was silver in terms of LEED sustainability. Right now, we're on target to achieve gold, and we're there pretty solidly. We've helped them secure and come up with those 3 phases for project delivery. Like I said, like the city has ambitious goals. They want this much, but they've got this much money. So we've helped them come up with different ways of phasing the project so that they are able to find different funding sources to achieve their goals. So at the end of the day, they are getting all the phases of the project. It will all be completed by 2024. And at the end of the day, it will be one of the top rated first responder training facilities, like bar none, because of the way that we have been able to integrate things from inside to outside. And I think a sign of doing something well is when somebody comes back and says, hey, could you do more? They've come back to us, and as I said, they've asked us to already incorporate another expansion in addition to the south side of the building. So some of the photos on the right are some photos that we took last week. We're in the top right. You've got the curtain wall and the rain screen system going up on the north side of the building. Top right image is some of the progress we've made in some of the classroom spaces. Bottom left, we've got an indoor scenario village. So we've actually created an indoor streetscape within the building because the police officers were training in, trying to go through scenario drills in an abandoned gymnasium. It takes a lot of imagination to, try to visualize what you're going to be going through. And that's one of the concerns with policing, is that not enough people are being put through the stressful situation. So by giving them an actual indoor village that has outdoor access, they can recreate some of the scenarios that they're actually seeing in the real world, really peak their stress levels, get their heart rates up, and experience what they're as close to what they're going to experience in real life. And then the bottom right is just kind of one of the images showing some of the sawtooth patterning that we've incorporated as part of the design process. So with that, that ends our formal presentation. So Rick, I don't know if you want to open it up to questions for the remaining 20 minutes or so.
Yes, but first I'd like to introduce Fanieski Peñamora, my colleague at Columbia and former commissioner of public works of the Department of Design and Construction, City of New York, and former dean of the engineering school. Fanieski joined us just after we started, so I would have done that earlier. We will have lots and lots of questions from the students, but Fanny, if you want to start that off, I'd appreciate it.
Again, thank you, Frank. Thank you, Denise, for your presentation. Very informative, very exciting. And it's interesting because, in this virtual Chicago field study, we wish we could be there in firsthand.
I'd love to have you guys see the site right now, because it's impressive how much activity is going on. So.
It is very impressive, particularly because both Rick and I had the experience of working in our own police academy. And,
I toured yours in New York.
You did.
Yes.
Very nice.
It is. That's one of the gold standards.
Yeah, and the public housing and the courtroom, the bodega, it's just like really nice thing that you are trying to recreate. I think because of budget constraint, as you mentioned, the whole idea of the outdoor training that was originally planned, had to be cut out. The budget never went down, but things were cut out.
Yes.
But I really think that would be great to see that. And I know how challenging, something that I was very impressed of your presentation is how you look at this as almost like a beacon of investment for the neighborhoods, and really look at how to add community assets in terms of, community training center and the like, and the streetscape investment and the redevelopment of some of the kind of the old manufacturing facilities. which I think we didn't do a good job of that in our police academy. And I think that may have been a missed opportunity, but still there is opportunities there that can be done. But I really like how you look holistically and the investment that is being made. So that was very impressive. I also like, and I know the students may have a lot more questions, that how you emphasize the role of kind of learning from the past work, particularly with your clients. Something that I learned from my time as a commissioner was that my general counsel kept saying, you cannot say lessons learned, because if you do the same mistake later, somebody can sue you because you never learned the lesson. So that's why I'm so careful about saying lessons learned now. Lawyers tend to be very, very careful, but I do feel that your work is quite interesting, and really taking that information, applying it to the new projects and seeing how you can improve. I think that was really nice. I also like your talk about the design build, because we are going through, even though I'm no longer in the city, I do get involved somehow. The design build projects here have been struggling, and it is just kind of a learning curve to go, but it's quite interesting how you were able to master some of those challenges and use it for the advantage of the city and the taxpayer. So that was very impressive. So I hope that the students, because we kept saying you have to reflect and reflect once you do something, how it went, what happened. I hope that sticks to them, so that when they go to the professional world, they keep that, because that issue of reflection is so important for us to continue to improve as we move forward. So thank you for your presentation. It was very illustrative, informative, and inspirational, because one of the things that through our center we're trying to emphasize, we are engineers. We know that, we like to build things, we like the numbers, but our work happens within the context of society, and how to take that into consideration, like listening from you, not only from us. I hope it does make an impression on them. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for this opportunity.
And so, Rick, the floor is yours back.
Well, I have many questions, but I'm sure the students do as well. So in deference to their engagement, both with AECOM here in New York and these issues, I'll open the floor to the students, and then I'll conclude with a couple of specific questions occasioned by the presentation. Who wants to ask the first question? Raise your hand, and Lynn, I see your hand is up. Please jump in. Turn your microphone on, please. Yeah.
Hi, Professor. Hi, friend, Dennis. Thank you for sharing these two amazing projects. And I'm very impressed with the slide of project performance. So I have a question for Dennis, actually. Could you use data analysis software like Power BI or Power Automate or Power Apps in your daily work? And how would you update the data, like when you evaluating the project performance every fiscal period or every month? How would you update the data?
Well, that's okay. That's interesting, because there is a lot of data. So there's a couple of systems, right? So internally here, we use Power BI for some things, and we also use, what is it? And it's not Incognito, Frank, it's Cognos, which takes our Oracle data and gives us nice databases. But the big data thing with the city that's always challenging is those numbers that we showed you, where we had to hit the hiring and the MBE and the WBE. So that takes certified payrolls that need to go into the system, right? Which then we actually had our contracting partner, by the way, is AECOM Hunt. Obviously, it's also part of AECOM. And so they have a payroll program that tracks that that verifies the accuracy of that. And then that goes to the city to show that we're, that we're hitting the numbers that we have. And then financially, we use Oracle here, and then we have our own homegrown system to also measure how we're doing on the project, right? Whether, Frank's designers are designing in the time that they're supposed to, and then are we billing the city? So there's a lot to unpack when you talk about the data that needs to follow, and nothing is on one system because it's just, different people have to see it, different people have to use it. I don't know, Frank, do you have any other things to add about that?
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with all that. It is done on about a monthly basis for the reporting because it does go back to payroll. So it is a certified payroll. So participation on the project site does auto-generate every month. And then with regard to reporting of that, we do communicate that with the client and the city on a monthly basis. The participation as well as the finances are reviewed every week. The schedule is reviewed every week. And so depending on the application that we're using, the construction team will also use Procore for a lot of their reporting,
Okay, yeah.
which is a pretty standard construction management software. So they will use that to assist with the sharing of schedules, budgets and the like. And then they will use P6 as their scheduling software. I hope that addressed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I have a follow-up question. Like, in your opinion, which key performance index would you care most about when evaluating the performance of the project, and also for the performance of the whole company? This is a similar question, and but I asked for yesterday's speaker, so I want to collect more answers from different people, because I think different clients also will have different concerns. So I want to know more people's opinions.
So Frank, you can add on, but I think frankly, I think our goals are consistent with our clients' goals, right? So and it's not one thing. I don't know how you rank them, frankly. So
I was going to say that I didn't think I could.
Yeah. So we want a design build that is correct, that's within budget. They want us to make money, obviously not too much money, but make the money that we bid to make, because obviously they want vendors that are making money and want to do work for them. So I think that's a common goal. And I think the other common goal is what's kind of in the ESG framework, which is we want to support small businesses so that they are successful. The city does to make the community stronger. So we're all proud of those goals as well. And also ESG also includes environment, which is how the type of building, I think we hit silver lead, right, Frank, on
silver for 2FM, gold right now for JPSDC.
Right. So, and they help with the community. So so the best projects and the best clients to work for are really where those goals are all aligned like that.
I agree. I don't think that there's too much I can add to that. I think it's difficult to truly put your finger on one item, because I do feel that there's so many different items that drive a successful project. And when you establish the goals at the beginning, I think that it's important to check back into those and see how you're tracking with, what both you and the client think is going to be successful at the end of the day. And I would say that when you establish those goals, to do repeated continuous check-ins to see how you're doing on that, like you would do with every project, is kind of a good way to just track progress. But like Denise said, I don't think that there's one specific metric where I could say that a project's successful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions from students in the call? While waiting for someone to raise their hand, I would say that my takeaways from superb presentation. Thank you both very much.
Rick, Chitis has his hand raised.
Oh, I didn't see that. Chitis, please.
That was really a very nice presentation. So my question is, what is iterative cost estimation model? As you have mentioned in your second or third slide, I guess.
Sure. So it's really about consistent updating. So there's no, I guess it's more of a policy than a specific model or the utilization of any specific software. But the intent of what we're trying to do is you can get pretty creative, especially with certain applications these days, by being able to do actual material takeoffs from Revit quantities. And so what we've done is, depending on the phase of the project, we have repeated check-ins with the construction team to say, look, right now we're at X square feet. This is the building materials that we're planning on using. Here are some of the systems. And earlier on, they would do kind of more area takeoffs. And then as the design develops, we're constantly communicating with them any changes that we're making in terms of square footage. As we progress more into the use of Revit, they get access to Revit, so they can set up their own quantity takeoffs that start to auto-populate some of the material and costs, unit rate costs that they're getting from the local market. And it's really just a constant level of communication and interface between the design and the construction team to make sure that, you know, we don't go completely off the rails and down a path that we can't recover from. So because of those repeated touch points, it also minimizes the likelihood that the project isn't going to align with the budget at the end of the day. So like, for example, concept, schematic, DD, the CD phases, we're having touch points throughout all that. So it's really just like a constant evolving process. And so that's really how it's iterative.
Got it. Thank you, Frank.
You're welcome. Thank you.
As a follow-up to that one, supply chain issues,
Yes.
problem with the pandemic and well, it's a rhetorical question.
I was going to say yes.
How does that kind of agile estimating and quantity takeoff relate to some of these issues on site?
When we kind of talk about the ability to make quick or responsive decisions, so we've seen elements impacted throughout the project. The TPO roofing was one. Apparently, one of the chemicals that's used to produce it was down in Texas when they lost power because of cold weather, which created a massive supply chain issue. So as a result, we had to come up with a temporary roofing system that would allow the building to get enclosed, weather tight, and they could start to heat it on the inside while they waited for the actual materials to come. The roofing installation was another issue that we came across. Nobody could find it. Like, you just couldn't get it. People were outbidding each other for it. Steel was another one that after we basically bought out the steel package, all of a sudden you couldn't find bar joists anywhere. So we went to the manufacturer's warehouse to do a walkthrough and make sure that all of it was there. They had 95% of it. They were missing a little bit, and that did cause a delay at the end of the day. But that also started to inform the decision-making process for the addition when we started looking at the add-on, the 20,000 square foot add-on. You know, initially the construction team was like, hey, we want to stay away from bar joists because we don't have the ability to secure them in time. So we've been able to be agile with them and kind of going back and forth and sharing concepts and testing the market has allowed us to probably mitigate some of the issues that could have occurred, as well as being agile and, you know, coming up with alternate solutions to keep progress going on site. So we are seeing it, and we're also seeing escalations and spikes and the cost of certain materials like lumber is what people were experiencing before, as well as some other materials at the moment that we're just having to work through. And that's part of the reason why you've got contingency built into some of the numbers at least.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Other questions? You know, what I was going to say as we draw close to the end time is if there are particular questions that it might be able to follow up by email with you if you like. But what I wanted to say is that my takeaway is from the presentation of both projects, the characteristics that were portrayed, and Frank, you've mentioned the word agility 6 or maybe now 7 times. That has to be top of the list and not just alphabetically, but also issues of communications, of a sense of urgency, of transparency, and certainly engagement with the community and with your clients, and that probably would spell out an interesting acronym, but I won't go there. Going beyond goals, came up several times very importantly. And what I was looking at earlier was, one of the mantras in the AECOM website says, we're listening to clients and the communities we serve in order to improve lives and livelihoods and to create sustainable legacies for generations to come. Both the community outreach and the working closely with clients, especially in the public sector, deals a lot with expectations. And one of the things that was said is, often the city doesn't have the resources to do everything that it wants to do, let alone everything that community residents near and at project sites want to do. And the answer, of course, in some way is phasing. I'd like to just ask maybe as a concluding question, because Denise, you've worked in the public sector, and Feniowski, you have as well. And Feniowski, I remember you talking about being able to phase projects so that different administrations can take credit for the same project, and it can continue across the divides of electoral processes and legacies, if you want to call it that, jealousies, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
How does some of these mammoth public projects that AECOM undertakes in Chicago and elsewhere benefit from working with clients on conditional phasing that may not satisfy everybody at the same time?
I mean, I think my whole career working with the public is phasing like that. I mean, there's some big ones. For instance, when I was at the city, when I was in transportation, I was project manager for the reconstruction of Wacker Drive, which is a double-decker roadway that runs east, west, and north, south. And in the beginning, under Mayor Daley, we wanted to do the whole thing. We wanted to do north, south, east, west, and put the Riverwalk in, which there was just, the money wasn't there. And also, it was also the time of the big dig in Boston. So we had our first deck pour, which was always at night. I think I had about 5 guys from the feds, because I don't know what they thought was going to happen. Like it was going to turn into Boston during a deck pour, but there were so many eyes on the project. So we decided to get the east-west built and do the environmental for the Riverwalk, right? And so then Mayor Daley retired and Rahm Emanuel became mayor, and he got the credit for building the Riverwalk because he was able to get that funded. So that's just something, you don't want a project to fall under its own weight. So there are good things about staging, and things change, priorities change, and sometimes it's a good thing. One that was probably not a good one that it took so long is we have this pedestrian flyover that literally has gone through 3 administrations and then finally opened. And in that time, the lakefront completely changed in the way they want the cross section. So the bridge has the old cross section, but we're happy to have the bridge. Yeah. But that is that's how you, just how you have to work with public money and to make sure the project's a success. So.
Feniowski, I think you get the last word. Reactions to that or anything else? Oh, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just want to again repeat myself. Thank you, and thank you for sharing. And we do hope that when things get better, we are able to go to Chicago, and even though some of the projects will be completed, we can maybe look around. We have done that when we went to Paris and London. There were some interesting projects that were completed, but we walked around it and was able to take in the end result and hearing you now, I think will provide very good perspective to the students. And I just want to say thank you for making time. I know it's very, very busy. And I know that the logistics and the whole supply chain is a problem, but with all the money that is coming our way.
I know, we're excited. We're so busy. We're so excited. Finally, I've been waiting for this all my career, for this infrastructure bill. So I'm delighted.
We all are delighted. There is a lot, and the competition, I think you referred to that. You know, we have been focusing a lot on the supply chain, but the competition for talent will be also very
That's
fierce.
huge.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
very, very difficult. And I think, you know, you providing this perspective, and we know that the new generation is very much focused on what impact they are going to have, not just work, but the meaning of work. I think I'm very excited of the future, particularly seeing how you have emphasized some of that meaning of work, and I think that that's good news, and we should never lose sight of that, even under very stressful circumstances as we are going to be. Let me tell you, the supply chain is not going to ease anytime soon, and the talent pool is going to be limited. So again, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, our pleasure.
And
Thank you.
welcome you guys to Chicago when you get the chance. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.